Chapter 12. I'm more than what's on my record. My past might be public, but my worth is not up for debate. When I finished writing the last chapter, when I said out loud to myself, "This time, I'm choosing to stay alive," I thought about what that really meant in the real world. Because staying alive isn't just about waking up with breath in your lungs. It's about facing the world that still wants to chain you to who you used to be. And for me, the chain has a name: my record. They look at me and think they already know who I am. They glance at the charges, the mugshot, the years I lost, and they assume the story's over. To them, I'm a felon, a risk, a number in a system, a checkbox on a job application, a background that doesn't lie. But what they don't know is that record. That's just the receipt of pain I survived. Every conviction, every date on that paper is just a timestamp of when I was drowning and no one asked me why. They don't see the home I grew up in. They don't see the nights I cried myself to sleep. They don't see the trauma I never got therapy for. They don't see the anger that had nowhere to go. They don't see the loneliness that whispered in my ear louder than any siren. That record isn't just about what I did. It's about the fire I walked through just to survive. But the system doesn't print that story. It prints the crimes, the charges, the failures, and then it dares to call that the truth. People say things like, "You made your choices. Now deal with the consequences," as if they've never been cornered by survival, as if they've never been desperate enough to choose what they swore they never would, as if trauma, addiction, poverty, or abuse don't push people to their edges. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I take responsibility. Yes, I hurt others and myself. But here's what I refuse. I refuse to live the rest of my life wearing a name tag that says unworthy just because society wants to glue it to my chest. Let me tell you who I really am. I am the man who cried when he got clean for the first time in years. I am the woman who still showed up for her child's parent-teacher conference even when she had no job and no car. I am the brother who wrote letters from prison to keep his family close. I am the sister who got back up every time she was told she was worthless. I am the story behind the record. I am the soul behind the sentence. I am the healing that came after the breakdown. You can't read a PDF of my charges and know me. You can't pull my name in a database and know my soul. You can't look at who I was and think you've seen who I am. I remember walking into an interview once. I'd done everything right. Clean resume, new clothes, even practiced what to say in the mirror. I walked in with nervous hope tucked into my chest like a fragile bird. But the second they saw my background check, everything changed. Their tone shifted. Their eyes said what their mouths didn't. "Oh, you're one of those people." It didn't matter how hard I'd worked to stay sober. It didn't matter how many programs I completed. It didn't matter that I was honest, motivated, and desperate for a chance. All they saw was the paper. I left that room with a smile plastered on my face. But when I got outside, I sat in my car and slammed my forehead against the steering wheel. Not because I was angry at them, but because for a moment I believed them. I asked myself, when will I stop being punished for the person I used to be? When will they see I'm trying? When will they care that I haven't reoffended, that I've been showing up every day, sober, stable, strong? And the truth hit me. Some people will never stop seeing me through the lens of my past. But that doesn't mean I have to. I started asking myself harder questions. What would happen if I stopped hiding my truth out of shame? What would happen if I told my story fully, not as a victim, but as a warrior? What if the parts they reject are the very parts that could set someone else free? Because here's the truth. I'm not just someone who made it out. I'm someone who's building something better, brick by brick. There's a different kind of pain that comes with re-entry. It's not just physical, it's emotional. Trying to rebuild when people keep reminding you of what you broke. Trying to believe in yourself when the world doesn't want to give you a second chance. Trying to apply for jobs and housing and loans, knowing that your name already comes with red flags. You're not just restarting. You're fighting through the weight of every no you didn't deserve. And yet, you wake up. You try again. You show up for your kids. You attend the meetings. You hold your head up even when the guilt still tries to crawl back in. That is power. That is transformation. That is what most people will never understand. They don't see the man who stayed clean during the hardest year of his life. They don't see the woman who refused to go back even when her old crew called. They don't see the one who cried at night because the temptation was screaming, but still chose to stay alive. They don't see that your healing is a full-time job with no paid days off, but you see it. And now, so do I. Sometimes I think about that version of me, the one who first got out. How I was so ready to do better, so ready to change my life, and how quickly the world made me feel like it wasn't enough. Doors slammed, eyes judged, people whispered, even family distanced themselves. It's hard to rebuild your life when the world keeps handing you the bricks of your past, but you do it anyway, one no at a time, one application at a time, one breath at a time, because you know you're not that person anymore. And even if no one believes in you yet, you've decided to believe in yourself. Let's be real. Your record can feel like a prison without bars. It's not just the time you served, it's the afterlife of it all. But here's the twist. You've already faced worse. You've already survived the cage. You've already overcome the withdrawal. You've already buried the old you. Now it's time to live like you've been resurrected. And that decision, that dangerous, beautiful decision, is where everything begins to shift. Let's be real. Re-entry is not just about surviving prison time. It's about surviving people's opinions. When you get out, you think the hardest part is over. But then you face the quiet, suffocating weight of stigma. It's in the job applications that get lost. It's in the landlord's polite but firm rejection. It's in the way someone's eyes shift when they ask about your past, and you hesitate before answering. It's in the silence after you tell the truth. I used to feel like I was wearing a scarlet letter on my chest, except it wasn't an A, it was an F. Felon, failure, forgotten. And I'll be honest, there were nights I almost believed it. Nights I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe they were right about me, wondering if my best efforts could ever outweigh my worst mistakes. But here's what I learned the hard way. The world will always have its labels, but only you get to decide if you'll wear them. A record is a paper trail of decisions. But paper trails don't carry context. They don't show the poverty, the trauma, the addiction that blurred judgment, the violence you grew up watching, the silence that swallowed you whole. My record says I broke the law. It doesn't say I was already broken long before that. It says I made dangerous choices. It doesn't say I never had safe options. It says I hurt people. It doesn't say I hated myself for years because of it. And this is why I started writing. Because if I let the record tell my story, I'd always lose. But when I tell it myself, suddenly the shame turns into something else. Power. There was a night I was sitting in a recovery meeting, half distracted, half present, when an older man looked me straight in the eye and said, "Son, you are not what you've done. You are what you choose to do now." It was such a simple statement, but it cracked me open. Because I had been living as if my record was my destiny, like everything was already written and all I could do was suffer the aftershocks. But his words reminded me, records are static, lives are not. I realized I had a choice, not to erase my past, but to expand it, to let my story be bigger than the ink on a page. That moment lit a fire in me, and from then on I decided I will not shrink myself to fit a file. People don't realize that healing after prison is not just about big wins. It's about small daily battles. It's choosing not to call the old number saved in your phone. It's walking past the liquor store when your body is screaming for escape. It's saying no to fast money because you're committed to slow rebuilding. It's holding your child and promising silently, "I'll never leave you again." These are the victories that don't make the news. But they are revolutions. Every day you choose differently is proof that you are more than your record. I'll never forget the day I forced myself to look in the mirror and say, "You are not a felon. You are not a failure. You are not a lost cause. You are a fighter. You are a father. You are a friend. You are a soul worth saving." It felt corny. It felt fake. I almost laughed at myself. But then I thought, why is it so easy to believe the lies and so hard to believe the truth? And I realized it wasn't because the truth wasn't real. It was because the lies had been repeated longer. So I kept repeating the truth, day after day, until one morning I looked in the mirror and didn't laugh. I nodded. I believed it, just a little. And that little belief was enough to keep going. Carrying shame is like paying rent in a house you don't even live in anymore. You keep paying for a place you've already moved out of. That's what shame feels like. I kept punishing myself long after the sentence was over. I kept rehearsing my worst mistakes in my head. I kept apologizing in ways that weren't healthy. I kept sabotaging opportunities because I didn't think I deserved them anyway. But shame doesn't heal you. Shame just chains you to the past. And one day I told myself, I've already served my time. I don't owe shame another day of my life. Your record can feel like a curse, but what if it's a platform? What if the very thing that makes people underestimate you is the same thing that qualifies you to reach people no one else can? When I walk into a room full of men still struggling with addiction, they don't see a polished speaker. They see someone like them. And because I've been where they are, my words carry weight. Not because I'm perfect, but because I'm proof. So I stopped hiding my story. I started sharing it. In small circles, in clinics, in prisons, in classrooms. Every time I spoke, I saw heads nodding, tears forming, hearts softening. Not because I had a record, but because I had redeemed it. Let's not sugarcoat it. Re-entry is brutal. It's walking into a grocery store and realizing you don't even know how much bread costs anymore. It's trying to explain a gap in your resume without breaking down. It's attending probation meetings like it's a second job. It's juggling the weight of child support, court fees, and basic survival. But beneath all of that, there's something else, a quiet kind of resilience. Every person who makes it through those barriers without giving up deserves more than a second chance. They deserve respect. There was one night, I'll never forget it, when I almost gave in. A friend called and said, "I got something for you. Quick money, no one will know." For a split second, the old hunger rose up, the desire to not feel broke anymore, the ache of wanting to prove I still had it. But then I thought of my daughter. I thought of the way she hugged me last time and said, "Don't leave again." And just like that, I said no, not because it was easy, but because I had finally decided I'm not throwing away my resurrection for a relapse. Here's what I've come to realize. The world will always see your record as evidence of who you were. But if you keep living with integrity, one day they'll have no choice but to see it as evidence of how far you've come. Because a record doesn't end your story. It sets the stage for your redemption. And redemption, that's where the story really begins. There comes a point where you stop begging the world to see you differently and you start showing up as the new you, consistently, relentlessly, unapologetically. I realized I couldn't erase my name from the system, but I could build a new name in the streets, in the community, in the lives of the people I touched every day. Not by being perfect, not by pretending, but by showing up. I showed up for my daughter's school play even when my anxiety screamed that the other parents were whispering about me. I showed up to recovery meetings even when I felt like a fraud. I showed up to job interviews even when rejection was almost guaranteed. I showed up for myself even on the days I wanted to disappear. And slowly, brick by brick, showing up built me a new reputation, not as the man on the file, but as the man rebuilding his life. There was a moment, I'll never forget it, when someone asked me about my past in a group setting. Normally, I'd dodge, deflect, change the subject. But that day, something shifted. I looked them straight in the eye and said, "Yes, I have a record. But I'm not ashamed of it anymore, because that record isn't proof that I'm broken. It's proof that I survived." The room went silent. And then something happened I didn't expect. Someone else spoke up. Me too. Then another and another. By the end of that night, half the room had admitted something they'd been hiding for years. That's when I realized our greatest shame often hides our greatest connection. We think freedom means walking out of a cell. But freedom is deeper than unlocked doors. Freedom is walking into a room and not shrinking. Freedom is telling the truth without choking on shame. Freedom is loving yourself enough not to settle for toxicity anymore. Freedom is sleeping through the night without the weight of your past crushing your chest. Your record doesn't take away your freedom unless you let it. True freedom is internal. It's the moment you stop living like you're still in chains. Sometimes I wonder, what if my record isn't just about me? What if it's about the story I'm rewriting for everyone who comes after me? See, when you grow up in survival mode, dysfunction feels normal. Crime feels like a career path. Prison feels inevitable. But every time I choose differently, I'm breaking that cycle, When I sit my child down and say, Daddy made mistakes, but he changed, I'm planting seeds of resilience. When I mentor someone fresh out of prison, I'm proving there's a way forward. When I speak in front of young people who think they're destined for failure, I'm holding up a mirror of possibility. My record may follow me, but so does my redemption. And redemption echoes further than shame ever could. There's something powerful about realizing you don't have to earn your humanity back. You were always human, always worthy, always capable of more. The system tries to convince you otherwise. It stamps you, labels you, files you away. But worth isn't determined by paperwork. Worth is intrinsic, and reclaiming it is an act of rebellion. Every time I say, I am more than what's on my record, I'm rebelling against every system that profits off keeping me small. And so are you. Let's be honest, sometimes the no's still hurt. The job rejection letter. The landlord who won't take your application. The woman who says she can't date someone with a past like yours. The family member who treats you like you're still that reckless kid. It stings. It cuts. It tempts you to go back to your old ways. But here's the truth. The world's rejection doesn't define you. It refines you. It sharpens your grit. It forces you to create doors when none exist. It pushes you to write your own destiny instead of waiting for permission. The world may keep saying no, but you only need one yes, your own. I used to think my record would be the only story people told about me, but now I'm writing a new legacy, one built on healing instead of harm, one built on presence instead of absence, one built on love instead of fear. A record is permanent ink, but legacy is living fire, and fire burns brighter than ink ever could. Here's the part that still shakes me. No matter how much progress I've made, there are still days I feel the weight of my record. There are still nights I hear the echo of my past. There are still mornings I wake up wondering if the world will ever truly see me as more. But maybe it's not about them seeing me differently. Maybe it's about me living so fully, so authentically, so unapologetically that their opinions no longer matter. Because the real question isn't, what's on my record? The real question is, what will I do with the life I still have left? And that's where the next chapter begins.